Hello everyone, this is Stepan and welcome to Hanging Pawns. This is another game from the Tata Steel Tournament of 2018 played in YKZ this January. Sergei Karjakin played white against Fabiano Caruana in a super instructive Queen's Gambit declined position. Karjakin was white and he opened with 1d4. Caruana responds with knight f6, not going for the classical d5, with c4, e6, possibly entering an Imzo-Indian position, knight f3, and d5, now transposing to a normal Queen's Gambit decline with a different move order, a bit different. Knight to c3, a6 by Caruana, which is not the most common move in this position. Usually players with black play either knight f6, bishop e7 developing, or bishop b4 pinning the knight. And Karjakin responds with c takes d5, e takes d5, of course taking with the pawn to give his knight a possible outpost on e4 and getting more central pawns anyway. Bishop to g5, pinning the f6 knight, bishop to e6, e3 by Karjakin, preparing to develop his light square bishop, knight b to d7, bishop to d3, h6, asking the bishop to move, and bishop h4. These were all normal developing moves so far and theoretical even, and the position is still almost known and there have been a few games played from it. Karjakin is a tiny bit better, but he doesn't really have that much going on at the moment. It's just that he's a tempo up because he's white. And here Caruana goes completely mental and plays a move that is unlike him. He plays the aggressive g5. Move is extremely weakening, especially when his king is still in the center and at least 2 tempi away from castling. It also doesn't really achieve a whole lot because the bishop can simply retreat. The angels also don't approve of g5 and it gives Karjakin a whole pawn advantage here, according to Stockfish. It's a weird mistake by Caruana, but it's a move that's commonly played in this type of positions and in some e4, e5 openings, and it could work, but you just have to be careful if you play it. But in this specific position it's too weakening, so it's not recommended to play that. We have bishop to g3, of course retreating, and knight h5 by Caruana. The benefit of the weakening g5 move is that Caruana can win the bishop pair. And here Karjakin plays bishop e5, a move which ensures a more favorable loss of the bishop pair for Karjakin, since he won't have to double his pawns too. And he can recapture with the knight if he wishes to. We have knight h to f6, not grabbing the bishop immediately. And Karjakin simply retreats, saving his bishop, but Caruana repeats with knight h5. And of course Karjakin doesn't go for a draw, he doesn't repeat with bishop e5 again, he plays knight to d2. And Caruana grabs the bishop pair with knight takes g3, and we have a takes g3. Taking towards the center and opening the rook on the h-file, of course taking with the f-pawn would be stupid. Knight to b6 by Caruana, queen to c2, developing his queen, forming a battery with the bishop, and bishop to d6, developing the dark square bishop. And here Karjakin plays e4, a great aggressive move, going for a possible isolated queen's pawn position if Caruana should take, but he would have much more activity, and the pawn won't be easy to attack at the moment. Caruana could blockade it, but it wouldn't be a weakness for Karjakin yet. And Caruana takes, d takes e4, bishop takes e4, eyeing the b7 pawn. And here, in this position, Caruana mysteriously fails to defend it. Why he did that is inconceivable for me. A simple move like c6 would have ensured an almost even game. Instead, he played queen to e7, perhaps preparing some tactics if bishop takes b7 with a discover check on the king, but there is 4 pieces which can cover the check on the e4 square, including the bishop that could just safely retreat to e4, and Karjakin just grabs the pawn with bishop takes b7. I mean, why wouldn't he? There's no reason not to. And Caruana plays rook to b8, not even discovering the check, and bishop to c6 check by Karjakin. And this position is getting hopeless for Caruana. After the loss of the seemingly meaningless b-pawn, his queen side is just falling apart, and he managed to blunder away the game in one move. We have king to f8. Karjakin played king to f8, and if you're wondering why not bishop to d7 check with a discovered check by the queen, then Karjakin could simply play king to f1 and the bishop on c6 can't be taken because white could then play rook to e1, winning the queen. And here Karjakin castles, queen to f6, knight to f3 by Karjakin, getting his knight back into the game. It was a bit useless on d2. King to g7, Caruana goes for manual castling, preparing to develop his rook to a more active square. Rook f to e1, and now he does it. Rook h to d8, and knight e4. This move highlights how superior Karjakin's position is compared to all Caruana's pieces. It's weird how Caruana hung himself in this game. First he deliberately wrecked his kingside by playing g5, and then he blundered or sacrificed the b-pawn, which is horrible either way. Queen to g6, defending the queen, and now not simply capturing the dark sword bishop, but a more aggressive move by Karjakin, d5. It's a pawn sacrifice which isn't completely justified if you asked an engine, but it gives white's position a lot of added energy, which Karjakin can force Caruana into a corner with eventually. Caruana of course takes the pawn, knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, and bishop takes d5. And here Karjakin plays queen to c3 check, forcing a weakening move by Caruana, f6, because it's unwise to retreat with the king, and f6 is the lesser evil move. We have knight takes d6, finally grabbing the bishop, c takes d6, and knight to d4. And in this position all of Karjakin's pieces, if you don't include the rook on a1 that hadn't developed yet, are perfectly placed. The queen is active on c3, it has a lot of squares it could go to, the knight is well centralized, and this is probably the best square for the knight, and the rooks are taking d and the c file eventually, and all of Caruana's pieces are useless compared to Karjakin's pieces. Maybe the only piece that could cause some trouble for Karjakin is the bishop on d5, but in this position after rook to d7, Karjakin immediately plays queen to a5, attacking the bishop and the a6 pawn. We have bishop to f7 and retreating, and b3, not taking on a6 immediately because Caruana could have taken on b2. Rook to a8, defending the a pawn and making his rook passive. Sometimes, perhaps in most endings, it's better to be material down and have active pieces instead, but here it doesn't matter really, it's almost completely lost whatever Caruana does. Karjakin grabs the c-file with rook a to c1, d5 by Caruana, pushing his passed pawn, his only strength in the position, rook to c7, exchanging a pair of rooks, and rook takes d7, queen takes c7, and queen to d3 by Caruana. It threatens the knight, and Karjakin defends and attacks tactically with knight to e6 check. The knight of course can't be taken because the bishop is pinned to the king by the queen on c7. King to g6, breaking the pin, and knight to d8. And in this position Caruana gave up the exchange with rook takes d8, and I couldn't really see why that had to be done at first, but after I started calculating the variations which could have occurred had he not given up the exchange, it was clear that what he did was the best move and the lesser evil move. If after knight to d8 he had just retreated his bishop to g8, which is the most logical move if not giving up the exchange, then Karjakin could simply play queen to e7, improving the position of his queen, and let's say Caruana attacks the rook or something, improves his queen with queen to d2, then queen to e8 check, and now the bishop that was on f7 is no longer there, so the e8 h5 diagonal is open. And now if the king should go to f5, then g4 check, king f4, queen a4 check, d4, let's say covering the checks, g3 check, king takes g4, queen d7 check, etc, etc. And if not king to f5, if after queen e8 the king retreats to g7, then it's even worse, just rook e7 check, king to h8 and knight f7, this is completely lost. So after knight to d8, Caruana decided to give up the exchange, which was the best move. And Karjakin of course takes the exchange. We have queen d2, attacking the rook and the a pawn, queen to e7, defending, and Caruana regains his pawn, and now he's just an exchange down. Karjakin plays rook to e3, defending the c pawn. We have queen to b1 check, king to h2, queen to f5, centralizing his queen, queen to c7, d4, pushing his only asset in the position and perhaps distracting Karjakin from the attack a bit. We have rook to e7, nevertheless, attacking the bishop on f7, queen to d5, b4, bishop to e6, getting it away from being attacked twice, queen to b6, attacking it again, threatening the bishop, bishop to f7, and queen takes a6, and going up a pawn again, and this is now just hopeless, which Caruana soon admitted to himself. He played d3, threatening to queen his pawn, but not really, because Karjakin finds rook to e3, an excellent move, which now ensures that if Caruana should push d2, he would simply play queen to d3 check, attacking both the queen and checking, and simply win the pawn after the exchange, and queen d3, rook takes d3, and the pawn would fall. There would be no way to defend it. Here he plays queen to c4, trying to exchange the queens, and we have queen to a3, declining the trade, and now the d3 pawn is inevitably falling, and in this position Caruana resigned. This was definitely a strange game by him, and it's not really like him to play aggressive double-edged moves like g5 or blunder pawns like this. It just goes to show that even the strongest players make beginners' mistakes, and what's actually really instructive about this game is how Karjakin immediately punished every mistake Caruana made and didn't let his advantage slip for a single second. Okay everyone, I hope you liked the game, and I hope you got something from it, at least something from this Queen's Gambit declined. Thanks very much for watching, have a nice day, and see you soon, bye!